Rewire your ADHD brain to carry hard work. Do this. Most people think ADHD is a curse when it comes to focus and discipline. And the third, but what if I told you it's actually your superpower if you know how to use it right? You don't need to force yourself into hard work. You can rewire your brain to crave it. This isn't about willpower. It's about understanding how your brain responds to stimulation, reward, and challenge. In today's video, we'll explore how to transform distraction into obsession, restlessness into productivity, and chaos into clarity. If you're tired of fighting your mind, it's time to start working with it. Let's rewire together. Create dopamine on purpose, not by default. Most people with ADHD aren't lazy. They're dopamine driven. The issue isn't that they can't focus. It's that they can't focus on what doesn't stimulate them. That's because the ADHD brain is wired to seek novelty, reward, and urgency. The problem: in today's digital world, the easiest sources of dopamine, like social media, scrolling, and notifications, train the brain to get pleasure without effort. It's not that you're not capable of hard work. It's that your brain has been tricked into thinking instant gratification is the only source of reward. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The ADHD brain doesn't have a dopamine deficiency. It has a dysregulation. That means dopamine doesn't flow consistently. It spikes with excitement and crashes with boredom. So if you're trying to focus on a long, slow, repetitive task, like studying, writing, or training for something, it feels like you're starving for stimulation. But once you understand this pattern, you can change it. You can create dopamine on purpose, not by default. The key is to train your brain to associate dopamine with progress, not just pleasure. You start by building micro rewards into your effort. For example, let's say you're writing an essay or working on a business proposal. Break it into sections and give yourself a hit of positive feedback at each stage. That might mean listening to your favorite song after finishing a paragraph, standing up and doing 10 jumping jacks after every email, or using a colorful checklist where you can tick things off with a satisfying click. These aren't just hacks. They're bridges. You're teaching your brain that effort is exciting, not exhausting. Another method: gamify your day. If you're working on something that feels boring, make it a challenge. Set a timer and race yourself to finish in 15 minutes. Give yourself points for completing tasks without distraction. Turn your to-do list into a scorecard. And the third, and reward yourself at the end of the day if you hit your goal. The ADHD brain loves urgency and feedback. So instead of fighting that, use it. You don't need to suppress your wiring. You need to channel it. Let's also talk about novelty. One of the fastest ways to rewire your brain is to introduce newness into old routines. That could be as simple as changing the environment where you work. Try a different room, a standing desk, or ambient sound. Research shows that small shifts in your environment can give your brain just enough novelty to stay engaged without needing to abandon the task entirely. Even the act of changing your font while writing can reset your attention. You're not lazy. You're creative, and your creativity needs space to breathe. The final piece of this puzzle is celebration. ADHD brains respond powerfully to emotion. And if you only associate hard work with pressure, deadlines, or fear, you'll never crave it. Instead, start celebrating your wins, no matter how small. Finish the task you were dreading. Say it out loud. Smile. Text someone. Write it in a journal. Let your nervous system feel the reward, not just intellectually, but emotionally. The more your brain feels that effort leads to joy, not just relief, the more it will chase that pattern again. Jay Shetty says, the energy you put into celebrating your progress will shape how often you want to pursue progress. That's neuroscience meets spiritual insight. That's how you move from scattered to structured, not by force, but by design. You aren't broken. You've just been feeding your mind junk food, dopamine. Now, and the third, you're choosing to prepare a feast that fuels your future. Turn hyperfocus into a superpower, not a trap. One of the most misunderstood traits of ADHD is hyperfocus. It's this beautiful, intense, or consuming immersion into something you love or find deeply stimulating. People often think ADHD means a lack of attention, but in truth, it's an issue of attention regulation. You either can't focus at all, or you're so locked in that the rest of the world disappears. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. If you learn how to aim it. Hyperfocus becomes dangerous only when it's unmanaged or misdirected. Have you ever found yourself spending 6 hours on a video game, editing photos for hours, or going down a YouTube rabbit hole, and at the end, feeling completely depleted, not fulfilled? That's because your brain was receiving stimulation, not satisfaction. You were active, but not aligned. I often talk about intentional energy, doing things with clarity, purpose, and alignment. Hyperfocus without purpose becomes an addiction to the feeling, not the outcome. So how do we transform hyperfocus from a trap into a tool? We start with purposeful anchoring. You need to become aware of what activities naturally pull you into flow, and then begin linking those states to meaningful goals. For example, if you can spend hours editing a video or designing something, ask yourself, can I attach this skill to something that matters? Can I use this to build a personal brand, support my business, or create value for others? Suddenly, your hyperfocus has context. It becomes more than just a mental escape. It becomes a bridge to your vision. Next, build a focus funnel. Think of it as a simple pre-focus ritual that tells your brain we're about to enter a zone of excellence. This could be a 3-minute meditation, putting on specific music, or dimming the lights. These cues help your brain associate hyperfocus with certain triggers. Over time, your mind starts to prepare itself. This is my productive state. This is when I create, when I move, when I grow. It's like training your attention the way an athlete trains muscle memory. Repetition plus ritual equals transformation. But we also need to protect your hyperfocus from hijack. Because the ADHD brain is impulsive by nature, it's easy to get distracted, even in the middle of hyperfocus. The trick, box your obsession. Instead of letting yourself spiral into something for hours without awareness, use timers and boundaries. Say, I'm going to go deep into this for 90 minutes. Then I'll pause, reflect, and reassess. This doesn't restrict your freedom, it gives it direction. Freedom without awareness leads to burnout. Freedom with structure leads to brilliance. I often remind you that discipline is the path to freedom. When you master your attention, you free your energy. You're no longer at the mercy of mental storms. You become the eye of that storm, calm and centered, even as everything else moves. Let's also talk about recovery. Hyperfocus can be exhausting, especially when it's unplanned. Your brain uses immense energy during these states, and if you don't build in moments of grounding and reflection, you'll crash. The solution is simple: pair deep work with deep rest. After a hyperfocus sprint, go for a walk. Breathe. Disconnect. I says that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. And those answers only emerge when we allow our mind to breathe again. One powerful habit: reflection journaling. After a hyperfocus session, write down what you accomplished, how you felt, and what you do differently. Over time, you'll start to notice patterns. You'll learn what triggers your most productive states, what breaks them, and how to recreate that flow more consistently. That self-awareness is like a roadmap back into your best self. You were never meant to fight your mind. You were meant to understand it. Hyperfocus is not your enemy, it's your edge. When you give it structure, purpose, and recovery, it transforms from a storm into a laser. And with that laser, you can build anything. You can learn faster, love deeper, and live with intentionality. I once said, when your passion becomes your path, where you no longer chase purpose, it finds you. That's what happens when you reclaim hyperfocus. You stop running from your distractions and start walking toward your destiny with fire in your mind and clarity in your heart. Redesign your environment to train your brain. Most people to change their behavior without changing the environment that shapes it. But if your brain is wired for ADHD, you can't rely on willpower alone to stay focused and consistent. ADHD brains are deeply sensitive to what's around them. Visual clutter, noise, light, even the energy of the room. That's why working in a messy space or an overstimulating setting can feel like trying to run a marathon while carrying bricks. It's not that you're undisciplined. It's that your brain is overloaded before you even start. As I often says, don't expect your mind to be calm if your environment is in chaos. That's not just spiritual wisdom. It's neuroscience. The ADHD brain is a pattern recognizer, always scanning for novelty and distraction. If your environment isn't designed for clarity, your mind will naturally wander. So instead of blaming your focus, redesign the world around you to support it. Start by creating what I call a focus sanctuary. This doesn't have to be a fancy office or a minimalist studio. It just needs to be a space that your brain associates with clarity, calm, and deep work. Remove visual clutter, papers, dishes, scattered devices, and replace it with simplicity. One notebook, one device, one candle, one playlist. Make this space sacred, not because it's perfect, but because it's purposeful. Your brain will begin to associate that environment with productivity and peace. Next, pay attention to sensory triggers. Many people with ADHD are more sensitive to sound and light. If harsh overhead lights drain you, use soft lamps or natural sunlight. If noise distracts you, wear noise-canceling headphones or play instrumental music. Experiment. Find your sensory rhythm. For some, it's silence. For others, it's a constant hum of lo-fi beats or nature sounds. This isn't about aesthetics. It's about aligning your external world with your internal rhythm. One powerful strategy is object-based priming. Place items in your space that gently nudge your brain into the right mindset. A vision board, a simple timer, a whiteboard with your top 3 priorities. These items act like anchors. They bring your attention back when it drifts. Your brain isn't misbehaving. It's simply looking for cues. Give it the right ones. You should also consider limiting temptation in your workspace. If your phone is your biggest distraction, move it to another room during deep work sessions. Or use apps that block notifications and lock you out of social media. ADHD brains are impulsive, not because of weakness, but because of sensitivity to stimulation. That's why even one ping or pop-up can derail 30 minutes of momentum. The solution isn't shame, it's strategy. Out of sight, out of mind is not a cliché for ADHD. It's a core operating principle. Now let's talk about movement zones. The ADHD brain often craves motion. Sitting still for long periods can actually reduce cognitive performance. So, redesign your environment to encourage intentional movement. Have a yoga nearby. Keep a mini trampoline or a stretching band. Set reminders to walk for 5 minutes every hour. When your body moves, your brain resets. Jay teaches that stillness and motion aren't enemies. They're partners. You need both to stay aligned. Another underrated aspect of environment: lighting and time of day cues. Use lighting to shift your mental state. Bright light in the morning, dim light in the evening. Let your space tell your brain when it's time to activate and when it's time to wind down. If your internal cues aren't reliable, borrow cues from your environment. That's what monks do. That's what athletes do. And the third, and that's what high performers with ADHD can do too. Also, don't forget to refresh your environment regularly. The ADHD brain thrives on novelty. That doesn't mean you need to buy new furniture every month. But you can rotate visuals, rearrange your desk, change your screensaver, switch your playlist. These subtle shifts keep your brain curious, engaged, and inspired. Predictable structure with unpredictable texture. That's the sweet spot. Finally, remember, your environment isn't just physical, it's emotional. Who you surround yourself with, the energy in your home, the people you follow online, all of that is your mental environment. If you're around people who drain you, criticize you, or pull you off course, your focus will falter no matter how hard you try. Surround yourself with voices that uplift, motivate, and understand you. Curate your digital space just as carefully as your physical one. Inspiration is an environmental choice. I remind you that you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. And you can't focus in the same space that taught you to distract yourself. If you want to rewire your ADHD brain to crave hard work, start with what's around you. Because when your environment supports your purpose becomes your environment. Build small wins to ignite motivation and momentum. One of the biggest challenges for anyone with ADHD is starting and sustaining hard work without feeling overwhelmed or discouraged. Motivation can be a fleeting visitor, and when the task feels too big or vague, your brain quickly jumps ship. I often teach that motivation is like a flame. If you try to start with a forest fire, you'll only get smoke. But if you start with a small spark, nurture it, and let it grow naturally, soon you'll have a fire that lights up your whole path. This is why building small wins is a game changer. Your brain is wired to respond to achievement, but it needs to recognize it clearly and immediately. The problem with big goals is that they often feel intangible. For an ADHD brain, this creates frustration and distraction. But when you break your goals into tiny, manageable steps, each completion releases a dopamine hit that reinforces the desire to keep going. Start with your daily micro goals. Not the whole project, not even the entire day's work, but the very next smallest action. It could be writing one sentence, doing 5 push-ups, or organizing your desk for 5 minutes. Celebrate that action because your brain doesn't see the size of the task, it feels the reward of completion. Progress, no matter how small, is a prayer answered. Your brain craves these prayers. Another key to small wins is tracking and visualizing progress. Use a journal, a whiteboard, or an app to mark your successes. Seeing your progress visually creates a feedback loop that propels motivation forward. It reminds your brain that effort leads to results, which leads to more effort. The ADHD brain loves patterns, and patterns of success are the most empowering kind. Be careful not to confuse small wins with perfectionism. Sometimes ADHD brains freeze because they want to do something perfectly before moving on. But the truth is, action breeds motivation. You don't need to start with perfect energy or perfect conditions. You only need to start. Done beats perfect because done builds momentum. Another practical way to build small wins is to bundle habits. Attach a new behavior to an existing routine. For example, after brushing your teeth, write down one task you want to complete. After your morning coffee, review your priorities. The third, these habit stacks reduce the energy it takes to start and anchor motivation in daily life. Celebration is just as important as achievement. When you finish a micro goal, take a moment to pause and acknowledge it. It could be a deep breath, a fist pump, a smile, or telling someone you trust. These rituals tell your brain, this is important. This is success. The ADHD brain learns through emotion, so feeling the win physically and emotionally cements the desire to repeat the action. Also, consider the power of accountability partners or coaches. Sharing your micro goals with someone else creates external motivation and a sense of responsibility. Here I want to point out that connection fuels commitment. When you know someone else is cheering you on or checking in, your brain releases extra dopamine, making the hard work feel more rewarding. Remember, motivation is not a constant. It fluctuates, just like energy, mood, or creativity. But when you train your brain to recognize and celebrate small wins, you create a reservoir of momentum to draw from when motivation is low. This reservoir doesn't rely on willpower. It relies on habit and reinforcement. In short, rewiring your ADHD brain to crave hard work means shifting from chasing big, intimidating goals to nurturing small, achievable steps. These small wins light your path, spark your energy, and build unstoppable momentum. My wisdom captures it in the way that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step and one small victory. When you honor each victory, your brain rewires itself to seek the next one, craving growth and progress rather than avoiding challenge. Use mindfulness and meditation to calm the chaos. One of the most powerful tools for rewiring an ADHD brain to crave hard work is mindfulness. The simple act of being present, aware, and non-judgmental. I often emphasize that the mind is like a wild monkey, jumping from thought to thought, craving stimulation and novelty. For someone with ADHD, this mental restlessness feels amplified every single day. But mindfulness teaches us to watch the monkey without chasing it, to create space between stimulus and reaction. Why is this so important? Because when your mind is chaotic, scattered, or anxious, hard work feels impossible. You're fighting internal noise just to get started. But with regular mindfulness practice, you learn to observe your distractions instead of reacting to them. You create a calm inner space where focus can grow naturally, not forced or willed. Start with micro meditations, 1-3 minutes of simply observing your breath or noticing sounds around you without judgment. Jay often recommends starting small because consistency beats duration. Even a few mindful breaths before you begin work can reduce anxiety and prepare your brain to engage fully. Another mindfulness practice especially helpful for ADHD is body scanning, slowly bringing attention to different parts of your body, noticing sensations without trying to change them. This grounds you in the present and helps reduce the tension that builds from stress or overstimulation. When your body relaxes, your mind follows. Mindfulness also teaches us the art of non-reactivity. For an ADHD brain, emotions can feel overwhelming and impulsive. Instead of immediately reacting to frustration, boredom, or distraction, mindfulness gives you a pause button. That pause creates choice. You can choose to refocus, take a break, or gently return to the task with kindness. This self-compassion is key because beating yourself up only feeds the cycle of distraction and avoidance. When you master your mind, you master your life. The practice of mindfulness doesn't just improve focus. It transforms your relationship with yourself. Instead of fighting ADHD as a problem, you begin to see it as part of your unique wiring that can be managed with love and awareness. Incorporate mindfulness into your daily routine by setting intentional check-ins. Every hour, pause for a moment to ask, where is my attention? What do I feel? These brief moments of reflection reset your awareness and help you catch wandering thoughts before they hijack your productivity. Lastly, meditation builds the mental muscle of sustained attention. Just like physical muscles, attention needs training. Regular meditation strengthens your brain's ability to stay focused and return quickly when distracted. Studies show that even short daily sessions can increase activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning and impulse control, which is often underactive in ADHD. It's not about becoming perfect or quieting your mind completely. It's about becoming a kind observer of your thoughts and feelings, learning to steer your focus gently back to what matters. Over time, this rewires your brain to crave the peace and clarity that hard work brings. Build routine rituals that anchor your focus and energy. When it comes to rewiring your ADHD brain to crave hard work, routine and rituals aren't boring. They're lifelines. I often say that discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. For an ADHD brain, That choice is complicated by impulses and distractions, but rituals simplify the decision-making process by automating it. Rituals are powerful because they create predictable signals for your brain. Instead of spending energy debating whether to work or procrastinate, your brain knows when this happens, we work. That removes friction and frees up your mental bandwidth for the task itself. Start by designing morning rituals that set the tone for your day. It could be as simple as waking up at the same time, drinking water, stretching, and reviewing your top 3 priorities. Jay often talks about the power of starting your day with intention. Small, consistent habits that shape your mindset and energy. When your morning is anchored in clarity, your ADHD brain is less likely to scatter into chaos. Evening rituals are just as important. Ending your day with gratitude journaling, reflection, or a tech-free wind down routine signals to your brain that it's time to rest and recharge. This balance between activation and recovery creates a cycle of energy rather than exhaustion. Another ritual is task batching. ADHD brains love novelty but hate switching costs. The energy lost when jumping between unrelated tasks. By grouping similar activities together, you reduce mental load and increase flow. For example, dedicate one time block to emails, another to creative work, and another to calls or meetings. Over time, your brain begins to anticipate what's coming and prepares itself, making focus easier. Also consider the role of physical movement in your rituals. Incorporate stretching, short walks, or breathing exercises between work sessions. Movement is medicine for ADHD, helping reset attention and increase blood flow to the brain. Jay Shetty often reminds us that movement and stillness are partners in well-being. The power of ritual is that it turns choice into habit, habit into identity. When your ADHD brain experiences repeated success in these mini routines, it rewires to seek the reward of accomplishment and calm. To reinforce this, build accountability rituals. Share your intentions with a friend or coach, set reminders, or join groups where your progress matters. Connection amplifies motivation. We become the average of the people we surround ourselves with. So surround yourself with support. Finally, be gentle with yourself if your rituals falter. Rituals aren't about perfection but persistence. They give you a structure to fall back on, not a cage to trap you. When you miss a ritual, observe without judgment and return the next day with kindness. I sums this up by saying that your habits shape your future. Start by shaping your today with rituals that honor your unique mind and heart. Rewiring your ADHD brain to crave hard work isn't about forcing yourself into impossible routines or willpower battles. It's about understanding your unique wiring, creating small wins, building rituals, and honoring your energy and focus. When you work with your brain, not against it, hard work becomes something you seek, not something you dread. When you learn to master your mind, you master your life. If this video helped you see your potential differently, hit that subscribe button and join the Inner World family. Together, we'll keep growing, evolving, and unlocking our best selves.